My daughter gave me a $2 lottery ticket while buying her father-in-law a $13,000 cruise. She'll regret that joke forever. She tossed the wrinkled ticket across my dining table like it was a napkin and kept her hand in the air for a moment, savoring the throw. "If you win," Kara said, bright as the ribbon on the expensive gift box she had waiting for Eric, "remember, half is mine." I pinched the ticket between two fingers so I wouldn't crush it. "Half." "Don't be dramatic." She gave me the smile that had gotten her out of parking tickets in high school. "I paid for it." Across from me, Eric rolled his shoulders back, soaking in everyone's attention. The gift box in front of him was the kind you see in boutiques where the clerks speak softly and the price tags hide under folds of tissue paper. His silver hair was barber neat, and his cufflinks gleamed in the afternoon light. "Now, Kara," he said, "your father has always been generous in his own way." "In his own way," she repeated, and I felt the small burn that phrase always carried when she used it. She lifted the lid and drew out 2 cruise tickets wrapped in silk. "But Father's Day is once a year, and some people deserve something special." Eric laughed softly, magnanimous. "These look extravagant." 13 grand, she said, eyebrows up. "Mediterranean, balcony suite, champagne on arrival. The works." He gave the room a patient nod, a man accustomed to gratitude. The room, my small house packed with relatives who had opinions about how big a man should dream, stared at the gold-embossed paper like it might sing. My sister Margaret pressed her lips together. My nephew Tommy studied the floor. My grandson Jake looked at me, then at his mother, unsure which expression to copy. $2 sat in my hand. 13,000 glittered across the table. I've been turning wrenches most of my life. One of those figures looked like money. One looked like respect. Only one of them was present. "That's quite a gift," I said, "for a man who's done so much for your family." Kara's smile held. "Eric has." I slid the lottery ticket into my shirt pocket, careful not to fold it. "Thank you, then. I appreciate the thought." She waved a hand as if dismissing a modest lunch bill. "It's a little joke." That's how I took it. "Just remember," she added, laughing for the room, "if that thing hits, I'm owed half." "I hear you." I didn't look at Eric. I didn't need to. His expression would be the same as always, a study in benevolent superiority. The man had a gift for treating my daughter like a poor relation he'd adopted for a tax deduction. We ate pot roast and potatoes. People told stories they'd told before. When everyone laughed, it was slightly too loud. When they praised the cruise, they glanced at me as if I might speak out of turn and cost the room its brightness. I kept my hands folded to keep from seeing the oil-black crescents that still lived under my nails, even after 2 showers and a bar of stubborn soap. The garage leaves its signatures whether you sell the business or not. After dessert, Kara used my phone without asking to take a group photo. She held it high and counted to 3. Then she handed it back and gathered her bag and the slim leather sleeve for the tickets. Eric kissed her cheek. "You're a good daughter." "Some people show love with gestures," she said, tucking the envelope away. "Others offer scratch-offs." Eric chuckled. That was the sound right there, the one that had slipped under my skin for 4 years. When they left, Jake lingered by the door. He's 16 and tries on seriousness like Suits. "Grandpa," he said, "you coming to my game Tuesday?" "Wouldn't miss it." He glanced at the car. "Mom shouldn't have said that stuff." I put a hand on his shoulder. "One day she'll wish she hadn't." "About half?" "About all of it." He nodded like a grown man and hugged me like a boy. Then he jogged after his mother and Eric, who were arguing about whether the Mediterranean is better in spring or fall. The door closed. My house got quiet again. Quiet is different when it swells rather than settles. I washed the plates and emptied the trash and wiped the counters twice. I told myself it was routine, not stalling. When the sink was clean and the table was clear, I took the lottery ticket back out and set it under the lamp. Powerball, quick pick. Saturday drawing, tonight. I'd seen enough men try to cheat work with luck. I used to hand out scratch-offs as gag gifts to customers who showed up with trouble they'd caused themselves. Here's a solution that requires less belief, I'd say, gesturing toward the bay where an engine waited open-mouthed. Tools. I put the ticket back in my pocket and reached for the remote. A text pinged. Kara. Keep an eye on your bank app. You always forget to pay the water bill. We took care of it for you this month. You're welcome. I stared at the message until the heart stopped pulsing, an animated kindness that made my fingers itch. I logged into the bank. A charge hovered on top like a bad smell. Cruise Line Mediterranean, $13,048.76. Same day. My card. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd held. Then I took another. I scrolled back through the last week. A florist, a luxury men's shop, a bakery that sold cakes so light they were barely food, all on my card. Charges I hadn't noticed because I hadn't looked. She had my card saved from the roof repair last winter. Just leave it, she'd said. I'll remove it after. She didn't. I stared at the cruise charge for a long time. The room felt different, like a stage after the audience leaves. The same chairs, the same lights, just no illusions. I didn't call the bank. Not yet. I let the anger cool enough to handle. At 10:58 p.m., more out of habit than hope, I pulled the ticket from my pocket and set it beside the lamp again. The news switched to the drawing. The host smiled with the same numb brightness as the gift shop clerk in my head. Balls rattled in a glass chamber. Numbers dropped into the tray like heavy fruit. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Powerball. 9. I read them once, twice, 4 times. Then I read the numbers on the ticket. I read those aloud. The same sequence. The same red 9 circled at the end like a joke told twice. I did not jump. I did not shout. 68 years of keeping my hands steady around stubborn parts came down to the next 60 seconds. I took a photo. I printed it. I placed the original ticket into a Ziploc bag. Then I put the bag in the old coffee can in the back of the freezer, under the crust of frost where nobody ever cleans. I pulled an old cigar box from my closet and put the printout there. Then I put the cigar box inside the empty guts of the broken microwave I never bothered to haul away. I sat at the table and placed both palms flat. "Okay," I said to the quiet room. "Okay." It was a number too big to imagine. It looked like auto shop receipts stacked to the ceiling. When Margaret had died 10 summers earlier, we'd talked about what we would do if something lucky blew through by mistake, take a train across Canada, buy the little lake cottage just to hear geese at dawn, fund scholarships for kids who worked harder than they test. We were not people who believed in windfalls. We believed in planning. But she would have wanted me to breathe once before I moved. I did that. Then I moved. By 8 a.m. Sunday, I had a new email address and a fresh legal pad. By 8:30, I'd left a message for a lawyer I trusted because he never put his name on a billboard. By noon, I'd created a small list at the top of the pad, the only list I'd ever enjoyed making. 1. Secure ticket. 2. Claim anonymously through trust. 3. Bank. Fraud on cruise plus charges. 4. Jake. College plan. 5. Kara. Boundary. 6. Eric. Lesson that sticks. At 2 p.m., I drove to a bank 2 towns over and rented a safe deposit box under the name of a trust I hadn't formed yet. Temporary, the clerk called it after the manager nodded. I still don't know if that was entirely by the book. I didn't ask. The coffee can rode with me in a paper bag on the passenger seat like a quiet passenger. We went in together and came out lighter. Monday morning, my lawyer called back. "Stephen," he said, "you never call me unless someone's done something wrong." "Someone has," I said. For once, it wasn't me. I met him at 3 o'clock. He listened without interrupting as I laid the ticket and the charges side by side. He pulled his glasses down to study the numbers, then pushed them up to study me. "I'd say congratulations if you seem like you'd enjoy it," he said. "I will. After." He nodded. "Anonymous claim is workable. We'll form a trust with a name that sounds like something that gives to birds." "Geese," I said. She liked geese. "Perfect. We'll need a trustee who's boring and honest. I know one. Fees will look like someone robbed you. But in this scenario, money is air. You will not suffocate. What about her?" "The daughter who thinks she bought your ticket?" He lifted the paper. "You have the video of her handing it to you. The joke about half it's in my phone. Good. That makes it a gift. Gifts are clean." He tapped the cruise charge. "These, however, are mud. We'll get them reversed, but I'd suggest we time things." "Time?" He looked at me over the rims of his glasses. "If the cruise is next month, a chargeback posted 48 hours before departure will wipe their booking and freeze their points. They won't be able to rebook anything more expensive than a ferry to Hoboken until the dispute clears. You didn't hear that from me." "How did you get like this?" I asked. 3 decades of divorces," he said, and slid a stack of forms across the desk. "We created the Goose Lake Trust that afternoon. We named a trustee who had the personality of a stapler. He filed an initial claim notification with the lottery office. He scheduled a private appointment in a plain building with a back entrance and a conference room that only had a clock because someone forgot to remove it. We were told to stay quiet until the check cleared and the lawyers were done nailing every door shut. During this period, the trustee said, you will be tempted to do something theatrical." I thought of Eric's cruise tickets. I thought of Kara's voice when she said, "Some people show love with gestures." "I'll try to resist," I said. He smiled without amusement. "Resist some of it." We opened accounts under the trust. We bought a small, forgettable condo in my name, which we moved my mailing address to. We completed a beneficiary designation for a college fund that only one human being on the planet could touch: Jake. We drew up a document my lawyer called a care covenant, which reads like it has teeth because it does. It laid out terms under which a certain person could ever have access to any distributions. It didn't forbid compassion. It asked for it back. Wednesday, the bank fraud team called. The cruise charge was clear theft. I told them to wait to process the reversal until the Friday morning 2 weeks before departure. "Are you sure?" the woman said. "We can credit you today." "I'm sure." That night, I stopped by Kara's house with a bag of oranges and the smile of a man whose face still works. Eric's BMW sat in the driveway like a sleeping animal. Inside, the house smelled of new furniture and pretense. Jake met me at the door. "Hey," he said. "Practice ran long. Wanted to drop these off." Kara called from the kitchen. "Just set them on the counter." She came around the corner, drying her hands on a dish towel that looked like it had never met grease. "Dad," she said, "you don't have to bring us groceries. We're fine." "I know." Eric arrived a beat later, crisp as always. "Stephen," he said, "how's the garage?" He always paused on that word, as if he had to work through a list of places men could belong. "I sold it last year." "Yes, of course." He looked at the bag. Valencia. Good choice. "Dad," Kara said, "you didn't answer my text about the water bill." "I saw it." "It's all set," she said. "Oh, and about Sunday. I didn't get to tell you before you left." "Emma's dad?" She gestured toward Eric. "He says there are only 2 kinds of people in this world, those who create comfort and those who consume it. He's always creating. I felt something settle inside me, the way a bolt finally threads true. "Must be nice," I said, "to get credit for every kindness." Eric chuckled. "Credit follows performance." "You're right," I said, and left before my face did something I'd regret. The following Tuesday, I sat on aluminum bleachers, watching Jake pitch against a team that arrived in matching warm-ups and matching parents. Kara was late. Eric was never late. He took a seat 2 rows ahead, close enough for me to see the shine on his collar. When Jake struck out their first batter on 3 pitches, Eric clapped exactly 3 times. Between innings, Jake came to the fence. "You see that slider, Grandpa?" "You placed it where good men hide their money," I said. "Corner low." Made him look. Jake grinned and jogged back to the mound. I caught Eric's eye for once. He held it a second too long, then looked away like a man who had just decided the sun would rise without him tomorrow. On Friday morning, 2 weeks before the cruise, the bank reversed the $13,048.76 and flagged the account. Kara's card declined at a boutique hair salon at 10:13 a.m., at a bistro at 12:05, and at a drive-thru at 2:32. I know this because at 3:04 she called me sobbing. "Dad, there's something wrong with your bank. Everything's broken." I said. "Tell me." "My card won't work." "It's saying fraud? Did you put a $13,000 cruise on it?" Silence. Then, very small. "Eric said it would be easier that way." "Easier than what?" She didn't answer. I waited. She tried to gather dignity like a fallen scarf. "We were going to pay it back." "You never noticed those things anyway." "That's not an excuse." "I know." "Jake's home?" "He's at practice." "Good," I said. "Come by my house." Alone. She arrived with red eyes and tight fists. I'd printed every charge I didn't authorize and clipped them together as neatly as a man can who never learned to enjoy paperwork. I laid them out like a row of small crimes. "You've been stealing from me, Kara." "Borrowing without asking is stealing." Her shoulders sagged. "Fine. Stealing. Why?" "Because we're trying to live a life, Dad." The words came out sharp. "One nice thing where I'm not the poor kid in the room. Just once without thinking about coupons or whether my husband's shirt is expensive enough for his father's club." "Your husband's shirt?" "Eric," she said, and the name came out as a plea and a curse. "He notices everything." "Does he notice integrity?" She looked away. "Don't start." "I've already started." I pushed a folder across the table. "This is a repayment plan." "It's fair. You'll sell the boat you don't use and the third TV. You'll pay me back every stolen dollar plus interest that isn't really interest, so you'll agree to it. You'll return the cruise tickets. If you've lost the window to get a refund, that's not my problem. It's 2 years of apology and numbers. Sign it." She stared at the pages. "What if I don't?" "I report the charges as theft and let the bank finish what it started. That comes with people in suits who don't care that I love you." She held the pen but didn't move. "One more thing," I said. "Don't bring Eric into my house again until he learns how to talk to people who built things he couldn't." "That's not fair." "It's the only fair thing in the room." She signed, jaw set, and left with the pages under her arm, a woman trying to pass as calm carrying a weight she wasn't used to. When the door closed, I sat very still. Revenge tastes best when it's earned in small bites. The following Thursday, the trustee and I sat in a room that could have been a dentist office if not for the security cameras and the way everyone smiled with their lips and not their eyes. The lottery representative wore a tie patterned with tiny clovers, which I refused to see as an omen. "Annuity or lump sum?" he asked. We took the lump sum and the tax hit. "Would you like a photo with the oversized check?" "I would not," I said, and we walked out the back into sunlight that didn't look different but felt less cheap. The money moved like electricity through insulated wires I could not see. Accounts got funded. Locks clicked in ways I hadn't heard before. The Goose Lake Trust acquired 3 small houses and a patch of woods I'd always wanted to keep from becoming a parking lot. It purchased a vintage motorcycle I'd never buy for myself then donated it to a high school shop program with a note that said, "Teach them patience." It put aside enough for a future I would not see. It did not buy a boat. 1 week before departure, Eric called me. He rarely called me directly. There are rules in his world about who dials whom. "Stephen," he said, "I need your help with something delicate." I let that sit there so he'd have to fill it. "It appears," he said, "that the cruise company believes there was a fraudulent charge. They have, temporarily, canceled our booking pending confirmation from the bank." "You don't say." "We paid for those tickets." "Who's we?" Silence, then clipped. "Kara handled it. You might want to ask her what card she used." A long breath hissed through the receiver. "She assured me." "That's your mistake right there," I said. "She assured." I softened my voice just enough to pass for human. "You'll get it sorted." He didn't disguise the edge. "We leave in 7 days." "Then you'll want to hurry." He hung up without a goodbye, a small mercy. On the Monday before departure, the cruise company confirmed the cancellation. Chargeback completed. Booking revoked. Points clawed back. I received an apology from a representative who assumed the thief was a stranger. "We have zero tolerance for such activity," she wrote. I almost replied, "Me too." That afternoon, I made one extravagant call. I booked the same ship for myself, my sister, and my grandson in a standard balcony cabin. Not a suite, not a grand anything, just enough room to sit and breathe and watch the sea make its case for peace. I didn't do it to be seen. I did it because I wanted one moment, the exact right one. We flew to Barcelona 2 days later and walked the Ramblas at an hour of the morning when the city belongs more to pigeons than to people. Jake ate churros with the focus of a boy who finally gets to choose how sweet the day will be. In the hotel, we slept like people who don't worry about whether the ceiling will leak. On embarkation day, the terminal thrummed with the sound of vacation. Rolling suitcases, voices pitched a little too high, the clack of a family's first photo in front of a sign promising bliss. We checked in with a clerk who smiled for real. "First-timers?" she asked. "First time on this ship," I said. She handed us cards and pointed toward a ramp that looked like a gangplank if you'd grown up on pirate stories. We walked it in a rush of ocean smell and metal. The ship hummed underfoot, alive. We were halfway to our cabin when I saw the scene. At the check-in desk, Kara's hands flew in a shape I recognized from 100 arguments about curfew and gas money. Eric stood with his jaw clenched so tightly I feared for his teeth. He had that look men get when the world refuses to recognize their rank. The clerk was polite, which is the opposite of impressed. "Dad?" Jake whispered. "That's Mom." "I see her." "Should we?" "No." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll see them on the pier in a minute." We found our cabin. Jake stood at the balcony rail 15 feet above the dock and laughed like a boy who hadn't laughed enough this year. "Look at the water," he said. I don't know. It's like new glass, better than a cruise brochure? Those colors never look real." He turned and stopped. Below us, flanked by 2 security officers doing their best to be furniture, Kara and Eric argued with an assistant manager who had reached the end of her training packet. Their suitcases sat closed, perfectly groomed, like insulted pets. People watched, then pretended not to. Eric leaned in close to the clerk. "Do you know who I am?" "Sir," she said, and her voice was kind, which is the best way to beat a man like that. "I know who you're not. A passenger on this ship today." I'm sorry. Kara's head snapped to the side, not toward the clerk but toward the water, as if the sea itself had betrayed her. Then she looked up. She saw me. I gave her the same small, calm nod I had given the lottery ticket under my lamp. Not triumph, not pity. A simple confirmation, cause and effect. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. I reached into my pocket and held up a folded piece of paper like a prayer flag. From 20 feet away, you cannot read, but you can guess a shape. She knew what it was. The repayment plan. The one she'd signed. The one plodding along in numbered installments that would not be sped up by tears. Behind her, Eric finally let his mask slip. He grabbed his suitcase and took 2 furious steps, dragging his pride behind him like a broken wheel. Kara took a half step after him, then stopped and stared up at me. For a moment I saw the little girl who used to run through sprinklers in a bathing suit with strawberries on it. For a moment I saw the woman who'd learned to measure love in ounces of champagne. Both looked lost. Jake moved close, his shoulder touching mine. "What do we do now?" "We go find the lifeboat drill," I said, "and then we find a deck chair and decide which blue is better, the skies or the waters." He nodded, teenage solemn, but before he turned away, he gave his mother a small wave, the kind that says, "I love you," and also, "I'm not rescuing you from yourself today." Maybe that was my favorite part. We sailed. The ship pulled free and the pier slid away, and the city turned into a painting with smoke. The captain came on the loudspeaker and made a joke that fell flat but made people feel held. Margaret and I had always dreamed about this without believing it. I talked to her in my head and told her the sea was greener than we imagined. On the second night, I opened my phone to a flurry of messages I did not answer. Some were from Kara. Some were from numbers I didn't recognize that belonged to lawyers who used words like entitlement and equitable. My lawyer had warned me. I sent a single text to Kara. "We'll discuss when I'm back. I love you. Dad." She responded with 3 messages in a row, all different sizes of rage. The last one was the smallest and hurt the most. "I hate you." I closed the phone and let the sea talk for a while. It says the same thing over and over. That's the point. After the cruise, there were meetings. There were documents written in a language that makes decent men doubt their own sanity. There were attempts to claim that a joke about half was a contract. There were insinuations about elder susceptibility, which made my lawyer laugh in a way he rarely allows himself. There was an attempt by Eric to recast the cruise as a benevolent loan rather than what it was, a theft disguised as a favor. In mediation, Kara sat 10 feet away and stared at a spot on the table like it might open and swallow her. Eric did the talking. His voice was warmer than usual, which told me he was scared. The spirit of the exchange, he said, was that this daughter, my daughter-in-law, provided the winning ticket. "She deserves consideration." "She deserves to fix what she broke," I said. "That's the consideration on the table." "Stephen," he said, "you've been small for years." My lawyer placed the video from my phone on the table. The audio was crisp. Kara's voice rang like silverware. "If you win, remember half is mine." "Joke," I said, "like the ticket." Eric glanced at their attorney, who gave a small shrug that said, "We knew this was useless, and we are here because you insisted on it." The mediator asked if there were any other matters to discuss. I slid another folder forward. "Yes," I said, "concerning the misuse of my credit card." The bank's statements were pointed as nails. The chargeback, the smaller charges, the pattern. Eric sat very still. Kara's eyes filled, and she kept them that way without blinking, as if all she had to do was keep the liquid where it was and time would reverse. The mediator took a breath. "Let me propose something." "No," I said. I looked at my daughter. "Let me." I turned one page at a time, each one a step a person could actually take. The repayment plan continues as signed. No criminal charges will be pursued if every payment arrives on time for 24 months. One miss triggers automatic referral. No conversation, no negotiation. During those 24 months, there will be no requests for money. None. Not for tuition, not for tires, not for holidays. The Goose Lake Trust is not a faucet. If all payments are met and there are no new misunderstandings with my accounts, then at the end of that period, the trust will pay for a family therapy program that has saved more families than ours, and which you will both commit to completing. You will not pick the therapist. After that, we will talk, not before." Silence lay on the table like a clean sheet. The mediator studied the page and nodded because the plan was boring, and boring is how people get better. Eric sat back with that half-smile he gives when he's calculating. "Why would we agree to terms we can contest in court?" My lawyer shrugged. "Because you'll lose. And because this is more generous than a court will be." Eric looked at Kara. For the first time in a long time, the careful arrangement on his face loosened. He looked older. He looked like a man who had just discovered his authority had a leash. To her credit, my daughter didn't look at him for permission. She looked at her hands for a long time. Then she nodded once. "I'll do it," she said. He flinched, the way some men flinch when they discover they aren't the son. We signed. I stood. In the parking lot outside the attorney's office, a wind kicked litter along the curb, and the sound was louder than it should have been. Kara walked toward her car, keys in her hand. She stopped when she saw me. "Dad," she said, "can I ask you something?" "You can always ask." "Would you have told me? If I hadn't done what I did, would you have told me about the ticket?" "I would have told you about the sea," I said. "About how blue has sizes." I let that settle. "Eventually I would have told you the rest." She stared at her shoes. "The day of the cruise. I thought you were trying to embarrass me. Like you planned it just to hurt." "I planned it to slow you down enough to feel what you were doing." Hurt was on the table either way. Her eyes shone in a way that scared me because it reminded me of that girl with the strawberry suit. "Jake likes being with you," she said. "I like being with him. He's better with you." "That's because I don't need him to make me look important." A small noise left her throat, the kind people make when something sharp slides out. She nodded and walked away before either of us said something that would make tomorrow harder. The Goose Lake Trust learned new habits. It quietly paid off past-due lunch balances at the high school without asking for plaques. It bought the tools for a shop teacher who'd been making do with broken calipers since the Reagan administration. It paid for 2 kids from our town to go to a trade school that apparently costs as much as going to Mars now. The trustee sent me spreadsheets that looked like gravel. I read every line because reading every line had saved me once. Jake came by after practice and told me about a girl who could hit my slider with her eyes closed. He didn't call his mother a villain. He asked instead if people can be 2 things at once. "Every day," I said. That's the problem and the hope. In August, the college fund got a name, the Margaret Fund. I wrote it on a yellow sticky note and put it on the fridge as if the trust could read it. Maybe it can. Stranger things have happened. Look at me. In September, a letter arrived from the cruise company addressed to me personally, which means their CRM is better than Eric's reputation. It apologized again for the inconvenience. It offered a future credit as a courtesy. I mailed the credit to a nurse at the clinic where Margaret used to sit getting her infusions. The nurse wrote back a month later and said, "We used it to send one of our girls to see the ocean before her 3rd surgery." I sat at the kitchen table and let my hands shake for a minute in a way I hadn't allowed. In October, the repayment plan ticked forward like a gentle metronome. Clip, clip, clip. Kara texted me receipts I hadn't asked for. "Boat sold," she wrote beneath a photo of a bare spot on their driveway. "Television gone. New budget. I'm learning." Each message felt like a grain of sand leaving an oyster. By Thanksgiving, Jake and I had watched 12 sunsets together without solving the world. That's a good ratio. He asked if he could spend the holiday with me and Aunt Margaret. I said yes and told him he could invite his mother too. He hesitated, then nodded. "She's trying." "Trying," I said, "is more important than I thought when I was young." We ate in my small dining room with the window cracked so the smell of cold could find its way in. Kara sat quietly and passed the gravy and didn't talk about money or Eric's club. She told a story about Jake when he was 5 and got lost in a corn maze and told the teenage attendant that the map was for quitters. We laughed. After dinner, she stayed to help with dishes. Some of Margaret's bowls still show their age. The faded blue pattern has become a kind of honesty I trust. I picked up extra shifts, Kara said, scrubbing a pan. They're not glamorous, but they're mine. I'm glad, I said. She set the pan on the rack and didn't look at me. I'm going to finish paying you back. I know. I'm going to do therapy with or without your trust, she added, and there was iron in her voice that wasn't pride. I don't want to be this person anymore. I'm glad about that too. She dried her hands and stood there, not hugging me, not asking me to do the work for her. That was the first new thing I believed all year. Later that night, when the house had settled into old bones and patterns, I took the lottery ticket, now photocopied and archived in 3 places, and placed a new copy in the cigar box. Then I slid a note on top. Someone handed you a joke and you answered it with a plan. Don't forget which part mattered. A week before Christmas, the trust finished buying the patch of woods I'd watched for 40 years. I walked it alone on a Saturday, leaves underfoot, geese flapping overhead in a loose V that made no sense until you looked at it long enough. I found a place where the land lifted and you could see the curve of the creek and the kneeling light. I thought of Margaret there, which is to say, I thought of the best part of myself. I considered something that would sound like moralizing if I said it out loud, so I didn't. I just stood. Back in the car, I found a text from Jake. Got into state, full ride for baseball. Coach says I might close as a freshman if I keep my head on straight. He's right about the head, I wrote. Can I come by? Always. He arrived with a grin that didn't apologize for joy. We sat on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee he insisted he was old enough for. Mom told me she's working on things, he said. I know, I said. I can tell. She also said you gave her a plan instead of a punishment. That's not how most people do it. I gave her both, I said. Punishment was part of the plan. He nodded like a man older than he looks. You know what I think? What's that? I think some people show love with gestures, and some people show love with rules. He smiled. Sometimes you need both. The porch creaked under our chairs the way it has forever. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked at nothing, which is the only honest thing dogs do. The world still had men like Eric in it, and banks, and cruises, and luck. It also had geese and rules and boys who pitch low and learn to keep their eyes on the catcher, not the crowd. Before he left, Jake held up his phone. One more selfie, he said, mocking his mother without me telling him to. We snapped a picture where we both looked like the sun chose us. He shoved the phone into his pocket. By the way, he said at the door, what did you do with the cruise credit they sent you? Gave it away. He shook his head, grinning. I should have guessed. When he was gone, I sat and let that long quiet fill the house again. Then I took my legal pad out and turned to a clean page. I wrote, 7. Call the shop teacher. Ask if the kids want to rebuild a carburetor from scratch. See if Jake wants to help show them how to throw sliders low and outside after. I closed the pad and stood to make a pot of chili. I've made the same way for 30 years. I salted it the way Margaret taught me. I stirred it with the same spoon. You can build a fortune and still need to remember how to do one thing the old way. When the pot began to sing, I took the little lottery ticket copy from the cigar box and set it under the magnet beside Jake's acceptance letter. 2 pieces of paper that looked like nothing. 2 reasons a man can decide not to feel small again. Some people show love with grand gestures. Some use rules. Most of us, if we're lucky, learn how to do both once the numbers fall our way, and we finally choose what to do with them.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.